Hello, I'm Jeremy Rivera, your unscripted SEO and small business podcast host. I'm here with Louis Swart of Iron Ridge. It is ridiculously early in Australia where he's based out of, so I'm grateful for him coming on American time. I don't think that I would wake up that early to record a podcast, so mad respect. Um, why don't we kick off by you giving us a taste of your history, a bit of your expertise, and as I always say, why should we trust you as an SEO and marketing expert?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, Jeremy, first of all, I'm really happy to be here. I think it's incredible what podcasters are doing for the community. People can just tune in now and they can listen to you and they can get years of experience just condensed down into like a little episode. Kudos to you. I remember, I was 30. I just turned 30. I sold a business for 5 million. And I remember sitting in the bank and there was a big bank table, big boardroom table, and they had one of those the money counters on the table. The ones that go grrr, and then that gives the money, and then they put a elastic band on it and put it in the briefcase. Amazing feeling. And I remember thinking back to a plumbing business that I had just 5 years before. I had a plumbing business, and I had 10 plumbers working for me, and then I went to sell the business, and I went to a broker. And, I was 25, I was probably a bit cocky. And I went to a broker and I was like, hey, man, how much can I get for my business? And he said to me, Louis, like, who does your accounts? And I said, well, like I do. And who does your quality control? Well, like I do. And who does hiring the staff? Well, like I do. Because I'd been taught, if you want something done right, you need to do it yourself. Yeah. So I'd been taught that. So I did it all myself. So obviously, it must be worth more because I did it. And he said those couple of words that just devastated me. He said, Louis, your business is worth nothing. And I remember that sinking feeling in my stomach. And I'm like, you've got to be wrong, mate. You must be wrong. I mean, I've got 10 plumbers. I'm doing all this work. I've built this empire. And he's like, Louis, I need to find another Louis who knows how to do plumbing, knows how to do accounting, knows how to do all these things. And he goes, they just don't exist. And if they did exist, they'd have their own business. And I was like, wow, I remember that feeling, such a sick feeling. In any case, fast forward 5 years, went to sell that business. And the broker said, who does accounts? Who does quality control? Who does this? Who does that? Because I'd learned to delegate amazingly well, okay? So I had delegated everything in the business. I'd found somebody to do everything. And so we were able to sell it for 5 million because 5 investors came in, each put $1 million in, and basically they just took over the business, which was a real eye opener because on the one side, the business was worth nothing, and on the other side, it was worth really good money. Granted, we had 200 staff by then, but it just showed me how important delegation is. And lots of us, when we're solopreneurs, we go, oh, I can't really delegate. I can't really afford to delegate yet, right? Or how do I trust somebody? I'm doing everything myself and I want it to be right. How do I trust somebody? And so that was my big introduction into delegation.
I think that's a great origin story because I ran into this in another conversation in SEO that if you can't take a vacation and your business still earns money, you don't actually have a business. You own your job, which, don't get me wrong, deserves a step because I started in the corporate world. I was working, hourly or I was working salary, but I was making $40,000 and I thought I was doing great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember being in my 20s and like, oh my gosh, I'm making $40,000 a year. It's amazing. Um, and just slowly realizing just how little money that was, and slowly realizing like I have to commute 1 to 2 hours each way. I was in Southern
Wow.
California, so that was 2 to 4 hours out of my day to get there for a $40,000 annual salary. And I made them, I took over their digital marketing team, and I know that I turned their $1 million a year SEO service into a $3 million a year SEO service. And they refused to pay me a $3,000 bonus that I even had the manager's signature on. They sent the owner of homes.com out, who had bought the company, their parent company, and they said, Jeremy, we just can't pay this bonus. Nobody in the company makes this much as a bonus. I'm like, I am at the wrong company. If I, tripled your $1 million revenue for this service, and that was pretty much pure profit by how I did it. Didn't add any additional staff, very little software overhead, just completely revamped our process. And you won't shell out three K extra shekels. Like, I'm at the wrong company. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
get me wrong on there is a step there of owning your own job is definitely a thing. But you're right, taking it to the next level and delegation, that's a jump. Those are some processes. I'd love your wisdom, if you could speak on some of the lessons and pitfalls that happen when you are in that growth phase. Proper delegation, mapping things out. How does that work?
Look, I think in business, there's a saying, and it says different levels, different devils. And it's so true. If you've got a business and you're doing, even if you've got a job, and you're doing 40,000, there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of devils attached with that. There's a whole lot of stuff that you haven't thought of. And then you start a business, okay, and now maybe you've just working on your own. There's a whole lot of devils that you haven't thought of. Now you hire your first staff. There's a whole lot of devils you haven't thought of. And as you go up, even you can imagine even somebody like Elon Musk. I'm sure he's discovering new devils as he goes up with the levels. It's just so many things that you do. But I found that one really important thing is find somebody that's already gone to that level. So find somebody that's already gone to that level, and they know what most of the devils are, and they can help you. You don't have to find I've found some really expensive. Sometimes it's really expensive, finding those things. Um, but lots of times with the finding new devils is it's something that comes completely out of the blue. You just don't even expect it. So you may find suddenly that cash flow is a problem, right? And cash flow might become a problem because the business might be going really well, and cash flow might become a problem, or cash flow might become a problem because business is going really badly. So it can go either way. If your business does really well and you've got some staff, suddenly you're having to pay these staff, but you haven't invoiced for them yet, and so then you've got an issue with that. So that's causing you a whole lot of problems.
Talking about expertise and looking towards others, and the devils of that next level. I'm curious because I came across this as I was working on SEO for a company. They were in the transition phase. They'd grown up in Florida doing concrete wall installation in Florida. And they were looking to expand and not be known for being a Florida company anymore, but
Yeah.
they were nationwide. So that's obviously another, learning about devils. Have you had any experience in that, nationalization level coming out of a smaller business with a smaller footprint and trying to go bigger?
Yeah, look, as soon as you go bigger, you have, we're running an office and we've got everybody. We know where everybody is. So that's easy, okay? And you go to work, you arrive at work and you can see all the people, and it's quite easy, if Bob's not working because he's just not at his desk, okay? And then as you grow, now you start having remote offices. And now you've got staff in some random place. Or even if you've offshored, you've got some people in the Philippines or Nepal or Egypt or wherever. And now those systems of you actually seeing Bob at his desk and knowing that he's working, they just don't work anymore. They just don't work anymore. Okay. Because it's not like you're going to be on Zoom all day and I'm going to be like, hey, I'm checking on Jeremy. I'm making sure Jeremy's at his desk. Okay, that's the least productive way to do it. So now it becomes more important that your systems are better. Now it becomes really important that I've got a way that I can actually track the projects that I've given you and what your progress is on those projects. And if you're doing the projects according to some sort of SOP, some sort of operating procedure, or if you've got some sort of checklist that you're using for each project. Because as I'm growing, so I'm giving this project I might give it to a person in Australia, and then I might give it to a person in America, and then I might give it to a person in the Philippines. And I want to make sure that all of them come back to me with the same result. And so in order to be able to do that, it really becomes important to do procedures, to have procedures. And I found like checklists, like if you're taking on a new client, do you have a checklist that you tick off? Do you say, okay, so I've got the identity, I've got the ID, I've got their this, I've got their this, I've got their this. And then, some of us do that. But then when we offboarding that client, when that client's no longer our client, do we have a checklist that we do? Do we say, okay, we gave them access to these files. We now need to rescind the access to those files. So the more you create those, and I mean, it's never been as easy as it is now. I mean, it is incredibly easy. You can go on something like Loom, okay? You can go on Loom and I can explain a process to you and go, hey, Jeremy, this is how you do da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I just go create an SOP, and then it just creates an SOP for you. And then I look through it and I say, oh, yes, I like it, or I don't like that step. And I think that the systems make such a massive difference no matter what we're doing. Because for lots of us, the information's in our head. So we've got all this information in our mind. And once we can get that information down onto a piece of paper, then we can start getting people to work off that piece of paper. And then somebody comes to me and they go, oh, this client, we didn't do this process. We didn't get the 100 points of ID for this client. We didn't get the identification. And then I look at the process and I go, okay, what does the process say? It says you need to get their driver's license and their passport. And they go, yeah, but this person didn't have a passport, so we just did it. And then I go, well, okay, that's a mistake that I've made. That's a mistake that I've made on the procedure. So on the procedure, I now need to say, well, if they don't have a passport, you can use a driver's license and a passport. You can use credit cards or utility bills or whatever. That allows me to say, did you check this? Did you follow this? And where are there holes in that? And then once we fix those holes, every time there's a problem, we go back and look at the procedure first and see where the holes are. And if the procedure said you've got to do this and they didn't do it, that's a bigger problem. That's a problem. That's a staff problem. Okay? Where you go like, hey, Jeremy, it said here you've got to get 100 points of ID. You've ticked it, but you've got no ID. What's going on there? So that allows you to be able to start managing much bigger teams and also being able to work out if your people are doing the right thing or not. Because really, you can't punish somebody if they don't really know what to do. You can't penalize them in any sort of way. You can't grouse at them and say, hey, you didn't do this right, if they don't actually know exactly how you want it done, and they don't have some sort of checklist. Because we all learn different ways. Some of us learn by watching somebody else do it. Some of us learn by hearing and asking questions. Some of us learn by actually physically doing it ourselves. And a lot of us go in and we assume that everybody learns like we do. We assume that, you just show me a document and I'm going to be able to do it, no problem. Okay, so then I create all my documents like that. But somebody else wants to actually physically do it to learn. How do you allow for those in your business? So you've got to allow for all these different learning styles. And so I think as you're growing, that's sort of one of the biggest things is get your SOPs, get your operating procedures pretty cool, get your checklists pretty cool, okay? And AI is incredible. The stuff we can do now with that, creating clod skills, creating workflows, creating agents, going in N8N, creating agents in N8N, all that is Unbelievable.
I use an SOP framework that's included after every podcast I conclude. I have a skill that checks for specific concrete steps that can be turned into an SOP document, and it gets added to a library on Unscripted SEO to cross-reference. So if people want to learn how to execute the things that the folk on my podcast do, I extract it.
Wow.
Always looking for that tactic or strategy. So when I'm talking to a guest and I'm asking them, "Hey, what's your favorite tactic?" And it's pulling out that SOP, not just for me, but for my guests as well. But
Wow.
you're right that the capability of Claude, ChatGPT, and LLM tools to make those workflows so much easier because SOPs aren't new. I use them. Uh, in 2015, in 2010, when I was working with that digital marketing team, um, where I started out. Yeah, there was a lot of a lot of hard learning, a lot of things figuring out. But you're right that putting it down on paper of what would you say you do here is mandatory. I do have a little bit of a pushback on that, and it ties into marketing, it ties into execution is and it that the changeover from being a solopreneur to a business owner, how do you keep uh, the authenticity alive that is so required right now because of LLMs? I just interviewed Sonia Urquio, SEO by Sonia, and she's like, people are revolting. They're rebelling against the LLMs that are coming in with the soulless stuff and the slop AI slop out there. And human to human conversation is more important than ever. So how do you maintain that authenticity when you are building SOPs? And how do you not become a micromanager when their existence is defined by a checklist?
Excellent question. Excellent question. For me personally, um, if a mistake is made, then I get involved. So, how it would work is I would actually tell you how to do something. And then from that, we would do a Loom video and then you would create an SOP. You would create the SOP, not me. And then you'd send me the SOP. I'd have a quick look at it and I'd see if the SOP was okay. And then we'd run with the SOP. So that whole process, I'm not spending very much time on that. And then we'd run the process. And then as soon as there's a problem, we go back to the SOP and go, okay, what happened? Was the SOP not right? Okay. And then we build up on the SOP. And the reason we do this is the primary reason is because when we want to put on that next stuff, did you ever play that game at school? Did you ever play that game when you were kids? I don't know. We used to call it Chinese whispers. I don't know why, but you'd start off and you'd say something and then you'd say it to the person next to you and they'd say it to the person next to them. Well, what did you call that game when you were a kid?
We called it telephone here
Oh, okay.
in
I
California.
don't know. We used to call it Chinese whispers, which is a weird name, but that's what we called it. Okay. And it would go around and then we'd come back to you and it'd be like horribly different. Now, in business, my last company, I, grew it to 35 million, 450 staff. And I can tell you, I had to train all these people. I had to train thousands of people. And I initially started off and I was like, I'll train everybody. I'll train them, okay? Because I was only little and, I had one or two staff come in the first person got an amazing training. The second person got a reasonable training. The third person got an average training. By like the fifth person, you're like, listen, man, this is what we do. You kind of you've got it. Yeah, off you go. Go and do it yourself. Right. Because you just didn't have time. You didn't have time to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work, right? I can tell you that does not work, right? So then I went into the second one and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell somebody and then I'm going to get them to tell the next person. And it didn't even think about the telephone, Chinese whispers. I didn't even think about that, right? And so I went in, did it, bang, exactly the same as when you played the game as a kid at school. And I went out in the field. I remember going out in the field and going, well, what are you doing? And the guy said, oh, this is what I was told to do. And I'm like, what? In any case, when I traced it back, what had happened is each person had actually gone, hey, you know what? Jeremy told me that I've got to do this, but I found a shortcut. Okay, this is my shortcut that does it quicker. And then they would refer it to the next person and go, this is a shortcut. And so you'd end up with these, the person at the end pretty much had all the shortcuts possible condensed into one. And it was only doing like a tenth of what you actually wanted them to do, you know? Um, and so the, we do have to we do have to give people that authenticity, but there's got to be parameters that they work in. We always want some sort of parameters. Like if you're going to get 100 points of ID, there's no real creativity in that. There's no real, I don't want you to have your own flair and come up with your own documents, right? But if you find something new, then obviously that's amazing. And so in business, as it gets bigger, there's a fine line between, that's why as small businesses, we can move so fast. We just go, hey, I can do this, bang, we can do it.
The bureaucratic inertia does begin to build. So, yeah, I think proper SOPs is the cure for that. And also, I think you mentioned it there of recognizing in positions what are some aspects where we can allow for creativity or build creativity into the role, and just recognize this aspect of it. Yeah, like you need these three IDs. You're not going to be creative with it. But, website design, marketing, branding, there's art, there's so many aspects of things that need to get done that does take some degree of creativity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have a creative team, and my guys meet once a week where they just play. They pretty much just watch. They just watch. They just watch YouTube videos. They watch adverts. They just watch stuff. Okay, and they go, "Hey, I've seen this cool technique, and I have seen this, and I've seen that," and that really helps heaps with creativity. I used to run once every Friday. I would do a stand-up meeting on a Friday, and I'd bring the whole team together, and each one of them had to come to the meeting with an AI tool that they'd learned. And so we'd go, and I didn't care what the AI tool was. Didn't matter. Didn't matter if it was a game or if it was something they could use in their role. And what it allowed everybody to do was, we started doing this 2 years ago. It allowed everybody to come with something and go, hey, this is what I can do with AI. This is how I can edit a video. And then, 3 months later, somebody else would come and say, hey, this is how I'm editing videos. And we'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Or people would come and say, they'd come and say, hey, do you know that on ChatGPT, we can now create song lyrics? And you'd be like, wow, that's incredible. And then somebody else would come down the track and they'd go, hey, do you know on Suno we can actually put music to a song lyrics? And I'd be like, hang on, we spoke about the song lyrics on GPT. Why don't we create some song lyrics on GPT, put it into Suno, and then get a song, like a company song? So we did all that kind of stuff because it allowed us, because it was everybody's little inputs into it, which was pretty cool, because we're moving into an era now where AI, literally, like you said, AI, people do produce AI slop, and I do this AI training and I tell people, okay, I want you to write, ask your AI to write you the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Okay. And people go, write me the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And then it goes, boop, and gives them a story and they go, oh yeah, it's very generic. And I'm like, of course it's generic. You didn't tell it anything. Okay, now what I want you to do is, I want you to tell it, I want you to over-exaggerate anything that you like, okay? So let's say you like unicorns and fairies and Disney movies, and I want you to say, I love unicorns, fairies, Disney movies, like, all that type of stuff. write me the Little Red Riding Hood. Or I want you to say, I love horror movies. I love horror movies. I love like Saw, when he shows him the x-ray and he's actually got a key behind his eye and he's got a scalpel and he's got to cut his eye out to get to the key to open up the door. Otherwise the walls are going to crush him. Write me the Little Red Riding Hood story. And then we read a couple of the stories in the room. And it's fascinating what AI can actually do if you put in creativity in the beginning. So no creativity in and no creativity out. Creativity in, creativity out. And that's the thing, people say, oh, AI is going to take it's going to take all the creativity. I think it's a tool like anything else. It's a tool that's going to give you this ability to be able to amplify whatever you do. So if you're a creative person, view it as a tool, amplify your creativity.
I I agree. Andre Nikolak, who I interviewed, he said, for SEO, AI has really been the steroids into the system that's allowed us to grow beyond just these, like checklists. Oh, did we edit the meta title? Did we edit the meta description? They were things that were on a checklist on a 200-point SEO audit that I did in 2012. And if I went back honestly now, there's maybe like 10 of those that are things that I, as an SEO, now still need to do. The rest can should be done either through plugins, infrastructure, AI tools, workflow, but that, I got paid several $1,000s to edit somebody's meta titles and descriptions by hand over the course of a week. It was hours where I spent resisting the urge to copy and paste. I had to write each sentence fresh. I was not allowed to use copy and paste. And, that's exactly what LLMs are best at. So with the steroids in the system, we can kind of be freed from some of the minutia and the drudgery of these systems if we allow it. That's my takeaway.
Look, I always say, imagine if you've got the chance, you've got a factory and you need to pack boxes, okay? And you've got the chance to hire 2 people. And the first guy is a muscular big guy, right? He's a really muscular big guy. And he can pick up like 2 or 3 boxes at a time, right? The second guy is a skinny little guy, but he's got an Iron Man suit, okay? And he can pick up 20 boxes at a time, right? And then you go, well, which one would you hire? And you go, well, I'd hire the guy that can pick up 20 boxes at a time and fly through the air and put it at the top shelf without even using a forklift. He's the guy that I would hire, right? And this is exactly the same with AI. AI is allowing us to do that. So that, like you say, we can get AI to do all the basic work. And it's exactly the same if you're using a virtual assistant. You get them to do the basic work so you can focus on the important work. The one caveat with AI that I have is that we are getting more and more reliant on AI, which is amazing. AI does incredible things. But they are still raising hundreds of millions of dollars to actually subsidize what we're doing. So at some point, they've got to say, hey, listen, we need to make this thing profitable. We're going to have to charge Jeremy more for the service that we're giving him. Okay? And then at that point, you're going to be like, well, AI does everything for me. It doesn't matter what you charge me. I have to use it. What am I going to do? And so I think that there's still a blend. We need a blend of human and AI, right? And one of the other things is that there's incredibly smart people like yourself who have got Claude and gone, hey, you know what? I do SEO and I'm going to create an agent that does, or a skill in Claude that does this specific thing in for SEO. And then somebody like me comes along and I don't really know SEO. And I go, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I read online that I can use Claude to do my SEO. Right. Then I'm going to go in and now I'm going to spend the next 3 months actually studying how to create an agent or how to create a skill in Claude. Okay. I'm going to study as much as I possibly can about SEO. And it's actually such a waste of time because somebody like you is a professional. Somebody like you could come in and ramp my business up 3 times. Or I can spend the next 6 months learning how to do it, in which case somebody like you is actually 6 months, like years ahead of that already. And so it's super important because now people think they can do it all themselves. And that's one of the reasons why we get so much rubbish out there is because people go, oh, I got a skill, and they put into Claude GPT and they say, hey, do this. And it goes, what a great idea. Nobody's ever thought of that idea before. You are a genius. This is going to be amazing. Definitely do this. Okay. And we go, it's got to be right. I mean, it's got to be right. Telling me how good I am. Okay. We don't go, maybe it's hallucinating. Maybe it's just trying to make us feel good. Um, and then we go ahead with it. And then we don't have any result. And we go, what the hell? You know? Because we haven't put the principles in that you've spent years actually learning. We don't know what those principles are. And you can read in a book. You need to put meta tags and you go, okay, I need to do that. And you put them in. But you've learned a whole different level of that. You've learned okay, when do you use them? How do you word them? What sort of stuff are you putting into them? That's the stuff that it's not telling you.
Yeah, 100%. I ran into that. My friend Matt Brooks at SEO Terra, we were talking about how he got like this massive, like 35 PDF download from their client saying what they need to do. And, you know, it was just like so much volume. It was a replacement of thought with like volume, but you could tell
Yeah.
that the person that sent it was just so proud of what they had made with Claude, or made with GPT. But it, like, on the professional review of it, it's like, okay, this could have been one PDF, and really as an action item, it's like these 5 things, and they're not like that. It's not all of that, but why don't we take
Yeah.
this, this, and this, execute on it. And so there's, uh, it's like, I had coined a phrase for it, of like getting that massive email from a client that obviously they'd just gone all clod on you. Like
Yeah.
clod hopping. That
Yeah.
was it. I called it clod hopping. Of just
Yeah.
like from idea to idea, and then, oh yeah, give me a PDF and send it over. And it was a delicate operation to unwind the expectations that came from that, because at the end of the day, these tools, they're really yes men, you know? They don't, it's very difficult. You can do it. You can, I suggest this methodology, and this will be an SOP for you, of create a council of 5 and ascribe 5 different personality types, who will argue with each other. So when you come up with a new concept, then you have a skill that's, council of 5. You already defined the personalities in conflict with each other. One's very generous, one's a miser, another is philanthropic. The other is, so you got like your 5 factors of humanity, right?
Yeah.
Is it profitable? Is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it effective? And then just make a cool guy, like like your chillest bro persona. And if you put that, your idea, into that, you get so much more out of it, um because you're seeing the same problem sliced and diced differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another SOP that I heard on another podcast I did, uh was that you ask it to come up with a solution to a problem. Then the next prompt is dissect and break down and argue and prevent and destroy what you just came up with. And then a third prompt of, with those 2 previous, the initial and the response, analyze both and come up with a path, a new opinion that doesn't repeat either of those, and yet reflects the thinking behind those. And you'll get a much more nuanced structured LLM output that
Yeah.
can help you in your business case a little bit more.
Mm, mm. Incredible. Incredible. I mean, that's what we do in humanity, hey? You know, we don't just take one option. And on that point, you know what my guys do? My guys would send me when AI first came out, they'd send me I'd get an email, like literally an email this long, and the email would be, "Can I have next Tuesday off?" And it would be like, "I really appreciate my job," and I da 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 da. And I'd read through it, and eventually I was like, I banned those. I'm like, you don't send me that. If you send me that, I'm not even reading it. If it looks like it's AI, I'm not even reading it. Okay? Just reject it. Just accept that it's rejected. If you send me and say, "Can I have next Friday off?" Approved. If it starts off with, "I appreciate working at the company," like literally, unless it's your resignation letter, like I'm not even looking at it. Okay? Because that's what we do. And I don't know. I don't know about you, but I mean, like I go, okay, I'm going to write a letter and I want to sound smart. So I go into AI and I'm like, "Make me sound smart." Da, da, da. I come up with this whole long letter. Then I send it to you. And then you get this long letter and you go, "This is too long to read." So you just chuck it into GPT and you go, "Revise." And then it does a revision. And then you go, "Write me a response." And then it goes, and then it writes me this whole long response. Then I chuck that into my GPT and I go, "Okay, revise. All right, what is this guy actually wanting?" Send him a response. I mean, we literally, people used to send emails. Now they're just sending you tons of information. Like, I mean, ridiculous amounts of information. So how do we
It
stop
sounds like
that,
Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, one thing that I found is like, have you used the thing Make It Spot? And have you used that, make this, make your response Spartan and concise.
Yeah.
And it actually cuts it down. It cuts it down substantially. I don't know. It's but it's really about it's about us trying to get that message across. Because otherwise it's just waffle. I mean, the AI is waffling, which all of us humans do. But yeah.
Curious
So
as we kind of wrap up, if you tell me about your book, it looks like the Bee Myth. Um, tell me about
awesome.
that and what inspired.
So the B myth is the busyness myth. Okay. And it's all about, now we live in an age where people tell you how busy they are. So you meet somebody and you go, "How are you going?" And they go, "I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Did you do the something? Oh, I was too busy. I was too busy." And we wear busyness as a badge of honor. So we wear it like, "I'm busy." And we're not saying I'm busy. What we're saying is, I must be loved. Everybody wants to use me. That's why I'm busy. I must be worthy. Everybody needs a bit of my time. I must be safe because I'm like so busy. Who else could take my job? So we've associated worthy with those other base needs. And the book is about a guy that starts off and it literally goes through a lot of my life, stuff that's happened to me in my world. You can imagine I've been in business for a very long time, and I've done, I've run teams and done solopreneur, and I've had all the things. Hey, I've had the burnout. I've had the, staff running random, doing all sorts of weird things. I've had times when I've been doing, $10 tasks and actually hoping to get a, $200,000 at the end of the year. And I've religiously done that, and I've done it really hard, and I've made no money, and I've gone, "What the hell? What am I doing wrong?" And in the book, I got a whole lot of really cool tips. So I'll tell you one of the cool ones. I'll show you this. This is off my computer. Okay. So this is a Post-it note, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to work out, okay, how much do you want to earn in the next year? So let's say in the next year, I want to earn $200,000, right? So you want to earn $200,000. So now, if you went and you got that job again and working for a boss, you'd be working probably 40 hours a week. Okay, maybe 40 hours a week, maybe 50 weeks a year. Like that's about the max hours that you could work, okay, for a boss. So it's about 2,000 hours. So it's 50 times 40, 2,000 hours. Now, what you want to do is, I want to earn $200,000. I divide it by 2,000 hours. And that gives me a figure of $100 an hour. Okay? Now I take my $100 an hour and I write it on a Post-it note. And I stick it somewhere, stick it on my monitor, stick it on my wall, stick it on my computer. And during the day, every time I'm doing something, I look up and I'll ask myself, would I pay somebody $100 an hour to do this task? And it's the most visual thing. It's such a basic tool. It is so super, super ridiculously simply basic, right? But it is such a powerful tool. Because you'll find yourself doing something in Canva and you're like, oh man, I can't get this to work. And then I look up and I go, would I pay somebody $200 to move this picture in Canva? And then I go, okay, you know what? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing this. And then I refer it on to my team. And my team charges me $10 an hour. Now, let's say you've got your base mark. So now I've got my base mark of $100 an hour, right? I need to earn $100 every hour, 8 hours a day. So it's generally not $100. It's probably double that, right? Because I don't want to work 20, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. But let's say it's $100. Okay. Now a task comes along and it's this book. You see the book up here. I've got to move the book in. Like it's not quite, like it needs to be moved a bit, okay? So I'd go, well, I'll just quickly do it. That's a $10 an hour task. I could get a VA to do that for $10. But I go, I'll just quickly do it myself because, you know what, I actually saved $10. I saved $10, right? The reality is that I've actually lost $90 because I need to make $100. So I've actually lost $90 in that hour. Now, how do I make up for that to be able to get to my goal? The next hour, I need to do $100 plus $90 that I lost the hour before. So every time you do a $10 task, you just make your work like ridiculously difficult. And you're just never going to reach that goal. So people do this. They have this $100 an hour. They do 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and then they do a couple of $100. And then they get to the end of the year and they go, well, look, I was aiming for, 200,000. And I only got to like 50,000. I don't know what happened. You go, well, obviously what happened was you were doing $10 tasks all the way through. What did you think was going to happen? You know? So literally that's one of the most powerful things that I can tell you is a Post-it note. And it's so super simple. You get a Post-it note or a sticker or a piece of paper. Mate, that will change. I promise you that will change your life. I promise you it's going to change your life. You're going to put it up on the wall. And how it works is it's super simple to calculate. Every 100,000 is $50. So every 100,000 is $50. Ideally, what you want to do is start off with that figure, and then you want to double that figure. When you get comfortable with that figure, then you double that figure. Okay. And you'll see that your income will just stay on par with that. So that's tool number one. Okay. I've got a second tool. You interested in a second tool?
Write down.
Okay. I've got a second productivity tool. So this one is called I call it the post-time planner. Okay. And how that works is you plan what you're going to do tomorrow. So you've kind of got your tomorrow planned out. But the reality is that sometimes you get to the end of the day and you go, hang on, I didn't accomplish all the stuff I wanted to do. I was so busy today, but I haven't actually done this stuff. And lots of times it's because we've actually done other stuff, or we've done stuff for longer than what we thought it was going to do. Right. So, I normally get up at 7. The other morning I got up at 5 and I was like, okay, I'm awake. So I got my phone out and I started playing on TikTok. And I played on TikTok for about 20 minutes. And then I was like, oh, I better get up. Got up, had a shower, came and sat at my computer and I was like, man, it's 7:30. I was almost late for my meeting. I was like, where did I lose the time? And I had thought that I'd played on TikTok for 20 minutes, but I'd actually been on TikTok for over 2 hours, which is quite easy to do. But if I didn't actually monitor that time after the fact, I would have got to the end of the day and gone, man, I got up at 5 this morning and I don't think I've accomplished anything more than what I normally do. Like, where did the extra hours go? So what we do is we just write down And, I've got some on my site, louisswart.com, or you can just make one yourself. Just get a piece of paper and you just write down every half an hour on a piece of paper. So if you start work at 7 in the morning, you write down 7 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8, 8 to 8:30. And then every hour, you can set a chime on your phone. Every hour you go back and say, hey, what did I do in the last 2 half-hour blocks? And you'll see if you do that I promise you do that for 2 weeks, you are not going to recognize yourself because you're going to start seeing, man, I think she spent a heap of time in the morning on socials, all right? Hey, I'm not actually spending any time doing this thing. And so you're gonna then start being able to work out where you're actually spending your time, which is super important because it brings me to the third thing. Would you like to know the third thing?
Always.
Okay, cool. So the third thing is, it's along the lines of that Brian Tracy, eat that frog. What's the one thing that you need to do today? You don't really want to do it, but if you did it, it would change your business. What's that one thing? So every day, as my business grew, initially I would have like a whole heap of to-dos, but as my business grew, I realized that I'd need to do less and less. I need to have less and less absolute to-dos to the point where I was doing between 1 and 3 a day. I got to a point where I was only doing 1 to-do a day. I'd walk into the office and I'd say, this is the one thing I have to accomplish today, irrespective of everything else. This one thing is going to move the business. Now, for me, me and my credit card, we've got a love and hate relationship, okay? When it comes to reconciling it, I hate it. I hate it because I leave it forever. Then it's 3 months into it and I'm like, oh man, I spent XYZ 3 months ago. I spent XYZ on a Tuesday night. What was it? My bookkeeper's saying to me, you need to reconcile it. We've got to do the taxes and it's like, okay. So I get to my desk and I'm like, sweet, I'm gonna do my reconciliation. I'm all ready. Okay. And then I go, hey, my desk's a bit messy. I'm just gonna quickly tidy up my desk. So I tidy up my desk. I can see the smile. You've done this. So I quickly tidy up my desk and then I go like, oh, I've got some books and I put them back in my bookshelf. And then I go, oh, you know what? I should just do the bookshelf. I mean, I'm here now. Hey, I should just. So I do the bookshelf. And then I go, oh, there's some stuff on the floor. I just quickly vacuum the floor, right? And then I get to the end of the day and I go, oh man, I didn't get to do my reconciliation. I was so busy today and I still haven't got to do my reconciliation. But the reconciliation is actually the only thing that I should have done that day. Okay.
Yeah.
And I call that productive procrastination because you're productive, but you're procrastinating from what you really should be doing. And we all do it. We all do it. And it's super productive, but it's procrastinating from something else. And I think a lot of times, with us, we're not implementing stuff. So, even learning can be productive procrastination. So you've come to this podcast, you've listened to it for an hour, thank you, super appreciate you. But what is one thing that you're going to implement from this podcast? If you walk away from this podcast and you don't do anything and you just say, oh, that was cool, and you move on, literally you've been entertained for an hour and that's amazing. Loved entertaining you, right? But if you walk away from this podcast and you've got a Post-it note on your computer with a figure, if you walk away from this podcast and you've got a post-time planner, your life is going to change. Things are actually physically going to change for you. So, those are the 3 tools that we kind of talk about in the B-Myth. And the book is written as a parable, so it's super easy to read. And then it's got all this stuff in the back. It's got a heap of free resources in there. Just, a whole lot of extra stuff for you to do.
Well, I absolutely love what you've been sharing. I'll make sure that the link to get the book, The Bee Myth, link to your site is listed in the show notes for anybody that's listening and waiting for that action item, that itch you must scratch. If you want other itches to scratch, check out unscriptedseo.com. I have a hub of previous interviews sorted by topic. So you can find previous guests who have spoken on those particular subjects so you can gather that information. Check out seoarcade.com. I've been working on articleizing some of these threads across multiple authors, gathering snippets from different interviews, lacing them together with SEO lessons, digital marketing lessons, small business lessons. And check out unscriptedsmallbusiness.com for all of the details of this particular recap. And appreciate you as a listener and appreciate you coming on as a guest, Louis.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the information that you're providing to people is incredible. And I mean, I think literally you are the future of podcasting. You know, the way that you're doing it, it really is the future. Keeping this human interaction and then putting in as much AI in the back end as possible. Incredible. Thank you so much. It's been a real privilege.
Well, it doesn't work very well without the humans, so I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.